What's up, everybody? Brady for Yell here, coming at you with a review of the new Myles Kennedy solo album, The Art of Letting Go. It was released this past Friday, October 11th. Just getting this out there right away. Myles Kennedy is one of my all-time favorite musicians. Alter Bridge is my favorite band. He's been a huge inspiration to me songwriting-wise, as well as just as a vocalist and even as a guitar player as well. His first solo album, Year of the Tiger, that came out in 2018, I absolutely love. It's one of my, I'd probably put it in my top 25 albums of all time. So many of the songs on that record were just so profoundly inspired and lyrically deep, and there was music that equally reflected that, and it did so beautifully with elements of blues and folk and country even at times. It was just so awesome to see Myles really depart from the hard rock sound, which of course he had done a lot of in Alter Bridge, but also Slash's solo band. He took a risk. He said, I'm going to make this album sound like how I want it to sound, and the results were outstanding. That being said, I wasn't too crazy about the follow-up, The Ides of March. It had a few solid songs on it, particularly more towards the end of the track listing, but that deep lyricism and the music that reflected that, none of that was really present, at least not nearly as much as it was on Year of the Tiger. As far as this album, though, I did do a single reaction to the first single, Say What You Will, and I did give a few more extended thoughts on his two previous albums in that video, so definitely check that out if you're curious. But now really getting into this album, judging by the singles, Myles made it very clear that he was going to make this a hard rock album, which is fine. For me personally, the more rock-tinged songs were the songs I gravitated towards less on Ides of March. So I was a little bit worried going into it, and I will say, I'm not super disappointed, but this album, much like Ides of March, just doesn't scratch that same itch that Year of the Tiger did. At least for the most part. There are some songs that I really do love on here, which I'll get into. I think the biggest issue I have with this album and why it might not get sequential replay value for me very much is that it doesn't really stand out much compared to Myles' other projects, specifically Slash, because a lot of the songs on this album have very much of a Slash vibe. Pretty much all of these straight up hard rock songs do, if I'm being honest. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I like Myles' stuff with Slash, don't get me wrong. There are some genuinely catchy riffs and catchy choruses and cool vocal moments from Myles on here, on the hard rock songs I'm just talking about so far. The title track, Saving Face, the first two singles, Say What You Will and Nothing More to Gain. Also Mr. Downside, and although it is a bit heavier, I would also include Dead to Rights in there. All of these songs, to me, sound like they could be on a Slash record. But getting more specific, there are parts in all of these songs that I really enjoy and other parts that I'm not really feeling. Without rehashing everything I said in the Say What You Will reaction, I still kind of have that same criticism, is that the song feels like it's building up, and then when you get to the chorus, it just feels a bit flat. It doesn't really hit that climactic itch that the verses and the pre-chorus give you. But like that sleazy, chunky opening riff that drives the song, I really enjoy. I like the overall vibe of that. Nothing More to Gain also has some of the catchiest riffing on the whole album. I love those verses, how they kind of have that stop and go thing with the riff. It makes it super catchy. And the chorus of this song does feel a bit more full and a bit more satisfying than Say What You Will. There's also that groovy bridge riff I really enjoy. And my favorite of the more rock-type songs has to be Dead to Rights. It has just a monster of a main riff, maybe the heaviest riff we've seen on a Myles solo song so far. There's also the verses, which are super dynamic in a way that they kind of start with that slower, murkier, just guitar riff, if you want to call it, and then it's contrasted by this other riff that's really funky sounding almost. The chorus, while it is a bit sugary, it does have that pounding snare drum that really drives it forward. There's a neat little solo in there with some really cool squeals to it. This song just has overall a really great energy to it. But as far as the other more rock-type songs on here, that's just not the case. Like Mr. Downside, for example, just doesn't really add anything to the album, and it doesn't do anything that other songs on the album already have done or will do better. It's fun and has a nice uplifting energy to it, which I enjoy, but there just aren't enough dynamics to keep me coming back to this song. I'm going to say the same thing about Saving Face. Just, again, not a whole lot of dynamics. I think the chorus is decent, but aside from that, it's just one of the more forgettable songs on here. You get those vocals, if you want to call them that, which just those melodies I feel like are kind of just dime a dozen. I feel like I've heard that melody in other songs before. There's another cool solo in there, but again, just this is a forgettable song. I'm sorry. I'm not crazy about the title track either, which is actually the opening song on here. Like those hey vocals he does, and there's the ah that he does at the end of it that sounds a little goofy. He sounds really nasally in the verses too. And again, instrumentally, this song just doesn't do anything that other songs on this record don't do better. So as you can see, the bulk of this album being those more hard rock influenced songs are very hit or miss for me. The songs I find myself enjoying the most are the songs that depart from the hard rock sound. The track Miss You When You're Gone might be my favorite on here. It just brings in so many warm feelings of nostalgia. I just talked about it in my best rock and metal songs of September video, so if you're curious, check that out. But I said in that video, I'll say it again, I don't know how this song does it. It makes me feel so nostalgic just in its melody, despite the fact that it's a brand new song. Like, normally I get nostalgic about songs that I have emotional attachments to, but this song just, it hit me with a wave of nostalgia the first time I heard it. Actually, in a very similar way that the Alter Bridge song Season of Promise did off of their most recent album, Pawns and Kings. It has my favorite lyrics on the album too, just about having to say goodbye to somebody that you don't want to say goodbye to, essentially. Myles has some great vocal delivery. I love the way he says, "This is gonna hurt like hell." The chorus also has just some really warm sounding vocal melodies from him, and he kind of has that slight minor key change towards the end, which I thought was pretty creative. It adds a lot to the song. Behind the Veil is a song that sees Myles really amp up his blues influence. There's that main riff that has such that awesome like swing to it, that awesome bounce to it that is just so catchy. Again, more awesome vocal moments from Myles on this song, especially in that intro when it's pretty much just him and the clean guitar playing. It sounds so intimate. Eternal Lullaby also has some really beautiful melodies, although that is another song that does kind of drag a little bit for him because of just the lack of dynamics. It also does get a little bit repetitive when he keeps saying Eternal Lullaby, but that's still a song that I enjoy for the most part, just for its melodies. I also love the closing track on here, How the Story Ends, with its exotic guitar melodies and its moody vocals and melodies as well. Another super catchy bridge riff that feeds into probably my favorite solo on the record. This song is so good and easily a highlight on the record for me because of its emphasis on mood. It really goes for, again, that exotic sounding, but also like slightly eerie, mysterious vibe, and it knocks it out of the park. I love that break before the final chorus too, when you get those toms that just add that extra hint of, again, exoticness, if that's even a word. The song actually reminds me a lot of this track, Love Can Only Heal, off of You're the Tiger, which might be my favorite Myles solo song ever. It definitely is one of my favorite guitar solos ever. Similar vibes there, just I've said it for the fourth time now, the exotic nature and the exotic note choices of these songs. It makes this song in particular really stand out on this record, where the majority of the songs don't really go for much of like an emotional mood. It's a lot of those more sleaze rock type sounds. I will say though, lyrically, I really enjoy what these songs are saying. I've already singled out the lyrics in Mr. Downside and Miss You When You're Gone. Those really stood out to me, even though I wasn't crazy about Mr. Downside as a whole. And the rest of the lyrics on here, even though they aren't as deep and introspective as Year of the Tiger was, they definitely feel inspired. It's not like on Ides of March when he was using just kind of more lyrical cliches and dime a dozen phrases. The lyrics on this album convey the messages in a way that's fun and still transparent, but without being dumbed down. And production-wise, I actually really enjoy how this record sounds, especially the guitars. I think the guitar tone on this album really emphasizes those bluesy undertones. And it makes those real quirky riffs really stand out and have more of like that grind to them, I guess would be a good way to put it. Like, again, on Say What You Will, Nothing More to Gain. And they also make a moment like the main riff on Dead to Rights, which is slightly more metal influenced, have still a pretty good punch to it. And of course, Myles sounds awesome. His vocals absolutely shimmer on so much of this album. My favorite vocal production part would probably be the verses on Miss You When You're Gone. So, I mean, this is still a solid album. I mean, I'm not saying anything on here is bad. It just didn't really, again, scratch that itch that I was hoping it would, like Year of the Tiger still does. And I just hope Myles is making the music he wants. He's not catering to his fans who he knows want to hear him play hard rock. This album gets a 19 out of 30 for me. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. Remember to hit subscribe for more rock and metal related content and comment your thoughts on this album below. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace.